In homes across America, the unthinkable has happened. Teenagers who should be planning for prom or college instead plan the murders of those who gave them life. Today we shall reveal the darkest corners of family dynamics, where adolescent anger, mental illness, and twisted logic collide with devastating consequences. Before we begin, subscribe now for early access to the most disturbing cases that defy human understanding. Case 1. Tyler Hadley, July 16, 2011, Port St. Lucie, Florida. 17-year-old Tyler Hadley committed an act so horrific that it sent shockwaves through the nation. Months from graduation, Tyler was described as withdrawn. Behind closed doors, tensions had been building with his parents over his behavior and drug use. He had been prescribed antidepressants but often didn't take them. That summer afternoon, Tyler approached his mother from behind with a framing hammer, striking her repeatedly. When his father discovered the scene, Tyler attacked him too. Instead of fleeing, Tyler spent hours hiding the bodies under household items in the master bedroom. Then, he showered, changed, and invited friends over. Nearly 60 teenagers partied in the home, unaware of the corpses in the bedroom down the hall. Tyler had grown resentful of his parents' discipline. Deeper issues included depression, substance abuse, and possibly undiagnosed mental conditions. He later told a cellmate he felt euphoria after the killings, a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. During the party, Tyler confessed to his best friend Michael Mandel, who contacted police the next morning. Officers found the battered bodies beneath a pile of household items, with a murder weapon placed between them. Despite loving parents who sought help for his emotional issues, Tyler showed increasing fascination with violence. Evaluations revealed severe emotional regulation problems, possible personality disorder traits, and effects of substance abuse. Charged as an adult, Tyler accepted a plea deal in 2014. Initially sentenced to life without parole, a 2016 Supreme Court ruling made him eligible for resentencing. In 2018, he received life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Case 2, Kiplen Kinkle, May 20, 1998, Springfield, Oregon. 15-year-old Kiplen "Kip" Kinkle forever changed his community through acts of violence that began at home and spilled into his school. Kip had struggled with behavioral issues throughout his childhood. His parents, Bill, a Spanish teacher, and Faith, a reading teacher, had sought help for their son, who was diagnosed with dyslexia and showed signs of depression. Despite their efforts, Kip's fascination with explosives and weapons grew increasingly concerning. After being suspended for bringing a stolen gun to Thurston High School, Kip returned home to face his parents. In a moment that would define the rest of his life, he shot his father in the back of the head with a .22 caliber rifle. Hours later, when his mother returned home, he met her in the garage and shot her multiple times, telling her he loved her as she died. The following morning, Kip drove to school with 3 guns and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition hidden in his trench coat. In the school cafeteria, he opened fire, killing 2 students and wounding 25 others, before being tackled by classmates while attempting to reload. When police searched the Kinkle home, they discovered bombs, explosive materials, and a journal revealing Kip's inner turmoil. He later told investigators, "I had no other choice, and I had to kill my parents." Psychological evaluations revealed Kip suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, experiencing auditory hallucinations that commanded him to kill. Despite his age and mental illness, Kip pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and 26 counts of attempted murder. The court sentenced him to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole, making him one of the youngest Americans ever to receive a life sentence. Multiple appeals based on his age and mental health have been unsuccessful, and Kinkle remains incarcerated at the Oregon State Correctional Institution. Case 3. Dana James Ewell, April 19, 1992, Fresno, California. 21-year-old Dana Ewell orchestrated a crime that revealed the darkest side of greed. The calculated murder of his entire family. Dana was born into privilege. His father Dale was a self-made millionaire who owned a successful aviation company, while his mother Glee came from a wealthy family herself. Growing up in an affluent Fresno neighborhood, Dana developed expensive tastes and an obsession with wealth that would ultimately consume him. On Easter Sunday, while Dana was conveniently away with his girlfriend, establishing an alibi, his parents and 24-year-old sister Tiffany returned home from a vacation. Waiting inside was Joel Radovskich, Dana's college friend from Santa Clara University. Armed with a silencer-equipped rifle, Radovskich ambushed the family, shooting each of them multiple times at close range. The investigation initially stalled, but detectives became suspicious of Dana's behavior. While appearing devastated in public, he immediately began inquiring about his inheritance, estimated at $8 million. His eagerness to access the family fortune raised red flags. The breakthrough came when investigators discovered phone records showing numerous calls between Dana and Radovskich around the time of the murders, despite Dana's claims they weren't in contact. Further investigation revealed Dana had promised Radovskich a share of the inheritance for carrying out the killings. What emerged was a portrait of a young man with sociopathic tendencies, someone who presented himself as a successful entrepreneur while secretly plotting to eliminate his family for financial gain. Former classmates described Dana as manipulative, status-obsessed, and prone to elaborate lies about his achievements. After a lengthy trial, Dana was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances in 1998. He received 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Radovskich also received life without parole after pleading guilty. Today, Dana Ewell remains incarcerated at California State Prison, serving a sentence that ensures he will never enjoy the wealth he killed to obtain. Case 4. Joshua Komisarjevsky, July 23, 2007, Cheshire, Connecticut. Though not a juvenile when he committed his crimes at age 26, Joshua Komisarjevsky's path to becoming a killer began in his deeply troubled childhood. Born to a religious family, Joshua was adopted as an infant. His youth was marked by disturbing behavior and sexual abuse by a foster teen his parents had taken in, and later by an older man from church. Despite treatment, he developed a fascination with breaking into homes at night while residents slept, what he called nocturnal adventures. After serving time for burglaries, Komisarjevsky met Stephen Hayes at a halfway house. Together, they invaded the Petit family home in what was planned as a simple robbery. The men beat Dr. William Petit and bound him in the basement. They forced his wife Jennifer to withdraw money from a bank. Upon return, Jennifer was strangled. Their daughters Haley, 17, and Michaela, 11, were tied to their beds, sexually assaulted, and the house was set ablaze. Only Dr. Petit survived, having managed to escape. Komisarjevsky's defense highlighted his history of trauma, sexual abuse, and untreated psychiatric issues. Evaluations revealed antisocial personality disorder, narcissism, and effects of childhood trauma. Initially sentenced to death in 2011, Komisarjevsky's sentence was commuted to life without parole when Connecticut abolished the death penalty in 2015. He remains incarcerated in a Pennsylvania maximum security prison. The case prompted discussions about cycles of abuse, failed rehabilitation, and how childhood trauma contributes to violent behavior. Case 5. Erin Caffey, March 1, 2008, Emory, Texas. 16-year-old Erin Caffey orchestrated a brutal attack on her family after her parents forbade her relationship with 18-year-old Charlie Wilkinson. Raised in a devout household, Erin was a church pianist whose parents enforced strict rules. When they demanded she end her relationship with Wilkinson, Erin's response was chilling. Rather than accept her parents' authority, she plotted their deaths. Erin convinced Wilkinson and his friend Charles Wade to kill her family, with Wade's girlfriend Bobby Johnson serving as the getaway driver. In the early morning hours, while Erin waited in the car, the 2 young men entered the Caffey home. They shot and stabbed her father Terry, murdered her mother Penny, and killed her 2 younger brothers, 13-year-old Matthew and 8-year-old Tyler. The killers then set the house ablaze. Remarkably, Terry Caffey survived despite being shot 5 times and stabbed repeatedly. He crawled 300 yards to a neighbor's house to get help, providing crucial testimony that implicated his daughter. Initially, Erin claimed she was kidnapped by the killers, but her story quickly unraveled. Investigators discovered she had discussed killing her family for weeks and showed no remorse when confronted. Psychological evaluations revealed a manipulative personality and an alarming disconnect between Erin's innocent appearance and her capacity for violence. At trial, prosecutors portrayed her as the mastermind who used her sexuality to manipulate Wilkinson into committing murder. In 2009, Erin pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. She received 2 consecutive life sentences plus 25 years. She will be eligible for parole in 2038 when she is 46 years old. Case 6. Alyssa Bustamante, October 21, 2009, St. Martins, Missouri. Though 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante didn't kill her parents, Her case reveals the psychological profile common in family murderers and the warning signs often missed. Abandoned by her drug-addicted mother and with her father in prison, Elisa was raised by her grandparents in a rural Missouri community. Despite their efforts to provide stability, Elisa developed severe emotional problems. She engaged in self-harm, attempted suicide, and was prescribed Prozac for depression. Her online presence revealed disturbing interests. She listed killing people as a hobby and recorded videos of herself electrocuting her brothers and encouraging them to touch electric fences. These behaviors, while alarming, went largely unaddressed. On October 21, Elisa dug 2 graves in the woods near her home. She later lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the forest where she strangled her, stabbed her repeatedly, and buried her body. In her diary, Elisa described the murder as amazing and pretty enjoyable, revealing a profound lack of empathy. When questioned by police, Elisa eventually confessed and led them to Elizabeth's body. Psychological evaluations revealed a borderline personality disorder diagnosis and a history of homicidal ideation that extended to her family members. During her trial, experts testified that Elisa had expressed desires to kill her brothers and grandparents, suggesting that Elizabeth's murder may have been a substitute for the family violence she contemplated. In 2012, Elisa pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a possibility of parole. She will be eligible for release in 2035 at age 41. Case 7. Andrew Walmsley, December 11, 2003, Mansfield, Texas. 19-year-old Andrew Walmsley orchestrated the murder of his parents, Rick and Susanna Walmsley, in a cold-blooded plot driven by greed and impatience. Andrew grew up in affluence in suburban Texas. His father was a successful accountant, and the family lived in a $1.65 million home. To outsiders, they appeared to be the perfect family, but Andrew harbored resentment toward his parents, particularly over their disapproval of his relationship with 19-year-old girlfriend Chelsea Richardson. Rather than wait to inherit his parents' estimated $1.65 million estate, Andrew, Chelsea, and their friend Susanna Toledano devised a plan to murder Rick and Susanna. After a failed attempt involving cutting brake lines, they executed a more direct approach. On a December night, the trio entered the Walmsley home. Rick was shot multiple times and stabbed. Susanna was shot and stabbed 18 times. The killers attempted to stage the scene as a robbery gone wrong, but investigators quickly grew suspicious of Andrew's behavior and lack of grief. The case broke open when Susanna Toledano confessed, revealing how Andrew had meticulously planned his parents' murders, motivated by the prospect of inheriting their wealth and insurance policies. Phone records showed numerous calls between the conspirators around the time of the murders. In 2006, Andrew was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Chelsea Richardson initially received the death penalty, the first woman in Tarrant County to be so sentenced, but this was later commuted to life. Toledano received life with the possibility of parole in exchange for her testimony. Case 8. Sarah Johnson, September 2, 2003, Bellevue, Idaho. 16-year-old Sarah Johnson shattered the peace of this small resort town when she murdered her parents, Alan and Diane Johnson, in their sleep. Sarah, a high school sophomore, had been in a relationship with 19-year-old Bruno Santos, an undocumented immigrant with suspected gang ties. Her parents, particularly her mother, strongly disapproved of this relationship and threatened to press statutory rape charges against Santos if the relationship continued. In the early morning hours, Sarah took her father's hunting rifle and shot her mother in the head while she slept. The blast was so powerful it removed part of Diane's head. Awakened by the noise, Alan Johnson rushed from the shower only to be shot in the chest. Sarah then fled to a neighbor's house, claiming an intruder had killed her parents. Despite her attempts to frame Santos for the murders, investigators quickly found inconsistencies in Sarah's story. Pink latex gloves matching those in the Johnson home were found in the trash containing Sarah's DNA. Gunshot residue was found on her robe, which she claimed she wasn't wearing that morning. The prosecution argued that Sarah's motive was simple. Her parents stood between her and her relationship with Santos. In a fit of teenage rage and impulsivity, she eliminated that obstacle. In 2005, Sarah was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. Multiple appeals have been unsuccessful. Now in her 30s, Sarah Johnson continues to maintain her innocence. From the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center in Idaho. Case 9. David Brom, February 18, 1988, Rochester, Minnesota. 16-year-old David Brom committed one of the most shocking family massacres in Minnesota history when he murdered his parents, brother, and sister with an axe. David grew up in a devout Catholic family. His father, Benoit, was an accountant for IBM, his mother, Paulette, a homemaker. By all outward appearances, the Broms were a model family in their middle-class neighborhood. David had no criminal record and was described as quiet and intelligent, though somewhat withdrawn. The night before the murders, David had an argument with his father over a cassette tape of music Bernard found objectionable. This seemingly minor dispute escalated in David's mind overnight. In the early morning hours, David took an axe from the garage and systematically killed his family members as they slept or were just waking. His father Bernard, 41, mother Paulette, 42, brother Richard, 14, and sister Diane, 9, suffered multiple axe wounds to their heads and upper bodies. Only his older sister Terry, who wasn't living at home, was spared. After the killings, David went to school and calmly told classmates what he had done. Initially, they didn't believe him, but police soon discovered the bodies and arrested David. Psychological evaluations revealed a deeply troubled adolescent suffering from major depression and possibly psychosis. His defense argued he was legally insane at the time of the murders, but the jury rejected this claim. In 1989, David was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms. He remains incarcerated at the Minnesota Correctional Facility in Stillwater and will be eligible for parole in 2041 when he is 70 years old. Case 10. Nona Dirksmeyer, December 15, 2005, Russellville, Arkansas. While not a case of a child killing parents, the murder of 19-year-old Nona Dirksmeyer reveals how family dynamics and suspicion can complicate investigations of violent crimes involving young people. Nona was a beautiful college student and former Miss Petit-Jean Valley who was found brutally beaten to death in her off-campus apartment. A piano lamp had been used as the murder weapon, and her body was partially undressed, suggesting a sexual assault. Initial suspicion fell on her boyfriend, Kevin Jones, who discovered her body. However, the investigation took a turn when authorities began examining tensions within Nona's family. Her stepfather, who had a complicated relationship with Nona, briefly became a person of interest due to family members' statements about past conflicts. The case became more complex when DNA evidence at the scene didn't match Kevin Jones. Nevertheless, prosecutors pursued charges against him, resulting in a trial that divided the community. Jones was acquitted in 2007 after his defense team highlighted investigative failures and alternative suspects. Years later, a palm print on the murder weapon was matched to Gary Dunn, Nona's neighbor. Dunn was tried twice, but both trials ended in hung juries. To this day, no one has been successfully convicted of Nona's murder. The murder of Nona Dirksmeyer remains officially unsolved, a tragic reminder of how violence against young people can leave lasting wounds in communities and families. Case 11, Brendan Dassey, October 31, 2005, Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. 16-year-old Brendan Dassey became entangled in one of America's most controversial murder cases, raising profound questions about juvenile interrogations and the reliability of confessions. Brendan, who had an IQ of around 70 and functioned at the intellectual level of a much younger child, was a sophomore in high school when his uncle, Stephen Avery, was arrested for the murder of photographer Teresa Halbach. Initially, Brendan wasn't a suspect, but investigators later questioned him after learning he had attended a bonfire with Avery the night Halbach disappeared. During a series of interrogations conducted without a parent or attorney present, Brendan confessed to helping his uncle rape and murder Halbach and then burn her body. The confession contained numerous inconsistencies and details that appeared to be fed by investigators, who used leading questions and false promises of leniency. Despite the lack of physical evidence connecting Brendan to the crime and his subsequent recantation, his confession became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. In 2007, he was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide, second-degree sexual assault, and mutilation of a corpse. He received a life sentence with eligibility for parole in 2048. The case gained international attention through the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer, which highlighted the troubling aspects of Brendan's interrogation. Multiple appeals have argued that his confession was coerced and his constitutional rights violated. In 2016, a federal judge overturned Brendan's conviction, calling his interrogation indefensible, but this ruling was later reversed by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court declined to hear his case in 2018. Today, Brendan remains incarcerated at Oshkosh Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, a case study in the vulnerability of juveniles in the criminal justice system. Case 12. Alex and Derek King, November 26, 2001, Cantonment, Florida. Brothers Alex, 12, and Derek King, 13, shocked the nation when they confessed to bludgeoning their father to death with an aluminum baseball bat while he slept. The boys had been living with their father, Terry King, in a dilapidated home without electricity. Their mother had abandoned the family years earlier, and the boys had spent time in foster care before returning to their father. In the months before the murder, they had formed a troubling relationship with Ricky Chavis, a 40-year-old convicted child molester who allowed them to stay at his home. On the night of the murder, Derek struck his sleeping father multiple times with a baseball bat while Alex watched. They then set the house on fire to cover up the crime and ran to Chavis's home. Initially, they claimed Chavis had committed the murder, but later recanted, saying Chavis had convinced them to take the blame because juveniles would face lighter sentences. The case became even more bizarre when prosecutors tried both the boys and Chavis for the same murder in separate trials. Chavis was acquitted, while the boys were convicted of second-degree murder without a weapon and arson. Psychological evaluations revealed the profound impact of neglect and manipulation on the brothers. Alex, in particular, had formed an inappropriate attachment to Chavis, who exploited the boys' vulnerability and resentment toward their father. The King brothers received 8-year sentences in juvenile facilities. Both were released after serving 7 years, Derek in 2008 and Alex in 2009. Their case prompted reforms in Florida's juvenile justice system and highlighted the vulnerability of children to adult manipulation. Case 13. Menendez Brothers, August 20, 1989, Beverly Hills, California. Brothers Lyle, 21, and Eric, 18, Menendez, shocked the nation when they executed their wealthy parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in their mansion in one of America's most exclusive neighborhoods. The brothers used shotguns to kill their father, a successful entertainment executive, and mother, firing multiple rounds into each parent at close range. After the murders, they went to a movie as an alibi, then returned home, claiming to have discovered the bodies. For months, police had no suspects. The brothers went on a spending spree, purchasing luxury cars, watches, and even a restaurant. This extravagant behavior eventually raised suspicions. The case broke open when Eric confessed to his psychologist, who later told his mistress about the confession. When the mistress went to police after the couple broke up, investigators finally had their lead. During their televised trial, one of the first to be broadcast on court TV, the brothers made the stunning claim that they killed their parents after years of sexual and emotional abuse at the hands of their father, with their mother's knowledge. Prosecutors portrayed them as privileged, greedy sons who murdered to inherit their parents' $14 million estate. After a hung jury in their first trial, the brothers were convicted of first-degree murder in a second trial and sentenced to life without parole. The case became a cultural touchstone, raising difficult questions about family secrets, abuse, and whether such trauma could explain, if not excuse, parricide. Today, the brothers remain incarcerated in separate California prisons, their case periodically revisited through documentaries and renewed public interest in their claims of abuse. Case 14. Joshua Phillips, November 3, 1998, Jacksonville, Florida. 14-year-old Joshua Phillips committed a crime that shocked his community when he murdered his 8-year-old neighbor Maddie Clifton and hid her body under his waterbed for a week. Maddie disappeared while playing near her home, prompting a massive search involving hundreds of volunteers, including Joshua and his family. 7 days later, Joshua's mother noticed liquid seeping from her son's waterbed and discovered Maddie's body hidden inside the bed frame. Joshua confessed to hitting Maddie with a baseball bat while they were playing, claiming it was an accident. When she screamed, he panicked, dragged her into his home, and stabbed her repeatedly to silence her. His primary motivation, he said, was fear of his father's reaction to the initial accident. While not a case of parricide, Joshua's crime revealed the profound impact of family dynamics on adolescent behavior. Friends and neighbors described Joshua's father as strict and intimidating. Joshua later testified that he lived in constant fear of his father's anger, which drove his desperate attempt to conceal the initial accident rather than seek help. Psychological evaluations revealed a teenager with severe anxiety, poor coping skills, and a home environment that fostered fear rather than healthy emotional development. Despite his age, Joshua was tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder in 1999, receiving a mandatory life sentence without parole. In 2017, following Supreme Court rulings on juvenile life sentences, Joshua received a new sentencing hearing. In 2021, at age 37, he was resentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He remains incarcerated at Tomoka Correctional Institution in Florida. Case 15. Christian Romero, November 5, 2008. St. John's, Arizona. 8-year-old Christian Romero, also known as Christian Slater, became one of the youngest children ever charged with premeditated murder when he shot and killed his father, Vincent Romero, and his father's friend, Timothy Romans. On that fall afternoon, Vincent Romero and Timothy Romans returned to the Romero home after work. Christian, who had been left alone, retrieved his father's .22 caliber rifle and shot both men multiple times. When police arrived, they found the boy waiting calmly outside the house. Initially, Christian claimed he discovered the bodies after returning from school. However, during questioning conducted without a parent or attorney present, he confessed to the shootings. The confession was later thrown out by a judge who ruled the boy hadn't been properly advised of his rights. The case stunned the nation not only because of Christian's extreme youth, but also because of the apparent lack of motive. Various theories emerged. Christian was allegedly upset about being spanked. He was struggling with his parents' divorce. He was influenced by violent video games. His mother had moved to Mississippi, leaving him in his father's custody, which some suggested created resentment. Psychological evaluations revealed a child with limited understanding of death's permanence and the consequences of his actions. The case highlighted critical gaps in the juvenile justice system, which was ill-equipped to handle such a young offender. In 2009, Christian pleaded guilty to negligent homicide in his father's death. Charges related to Roman's death were dropped. He was sentenced to residential treatment until age 18, followed by supervised probation. The court ordered intensive psychological treatment and prohibited contact with his mother, who had allegedly encouraged him to blame his stepmother for the killings. Today, Christian would be in his early 20s, his identity protected by juvenile court seals. Case 16. Jacob Ind, December 17, 1992. Woodland Park, Colorado. 15-year-old Jacob Ind shot and stabbed his mother Pamela and stepfather Kermo Jordan to death in their home, a crime he claimed was his only escape from years of horrific abuse. Jacob grew up in what appeared to be a middle-class home in the mountains of Colorado. Behind closed doors, however, he alleged that his stepfather sexually abused him from age 12, while his mother participated in the abuse and emotionally tormented him. His older brother had already fled the home, leaving Jacob alone in what he described as a house of horrors. After failed attempts to get help from school counselors and relatives, Jacob became increasingly desperate. He initially tried to hire someone to kill his parents, but when that failed, he and a friend, Gabriel Adams, carried out the murders themselves. Jacob shot both parents, then stabbed his stepfather repeatedly to ensure he was dead. During his trial, Jacob testified about the abuse, but prosecutors portrayed him as a troubled teen who killed out of hatred rather than fear. Despite evidence supporting his claims of abuse, including testimony from his brother, Jacob was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder in 1994 and sentenced to life without parole. In 2017, following Supreme Court rulings on juvenile life sentences, Jacob received a new sentencing hearing. At age 40, after serving 25 years in prison, he was resentenced to 60 years with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Jacob's case became a focal point for advocates of juvenile justice reform and greater recognition of the impact of child abuse on adolescent behavior and decision-making. Case 17. Cody Posey, July 5, 2004, Hondo, New Mexico. 14-year-old Cody Posey shot and killed his father Delbert Posey, stepmother Tryone, and stepsister Mary Lee on their ranch, owned by ABC newsman Sam Donaldson, culminating what defense attorneys would later describe as years of relentless physical and psychological abuse. The day of the murders, according to Cody's testimony, began with his father forcing him to pick up horse manure with his bare hands. When Cody refused, Delbert allegedly burned him with a welding iron. This final act of cruelty triggered something in the teenager. Cody retrieved his father's .38 caliber revolver and shot his stepmother and stepsister in the head before killing his father. He then buried their bodies in a manure pile using a backhoe. 3 days later, when questioned about his family's whereabouts, Cody confessed to ranch hands and later to police. During his trial, disturbing evidence of abuse emerged. Witnesses testified that Delbert regularly beat Cody, forced him to work grueling hours on the ranch, and emotionally tormented him. Teachers reported seeing bruises on Cody, and classmates recounted his stories of abuse. The prosecution argued the killings were premeditated, motivated by Cody's desire for his family's money. However, the jury was persuaded by evidence of the abuse, convicting him of voluntary manslaughter for his father's death and second-degree murder for his stepmother and stepsister. Because of his age, Cody was sentenced as a juvenile. He received treatment at a youth detention facility until his release at age 21 in 2010. His case sparked national debate about the appropriate response to juvenile offenders who commit violent crimes after suffering severe abuse. Today, Cody lives quietly, having been given a second chance that many juvenile offenders never receive. Case 18. Nehemiah Griego. January 19, 2013, Albuquerque, New Mexico. 15-year-old Nehemiah Griego methodically executed his parents and 3 younger siblings in their home, a crime that shocked the community and raised difficult questions about juvenile justice, mental health treatment, and the influence of violent media. In the pre-dawn hours, Nehemiah shot his mother Sarah while she slept, then killed his 9-year-old brother Zephaniah and sisters Jael, 5, and Angelina, 2. He waited several hours for his father Greg, a former pastor, to return home before shooting him multiple times. Using his father's AR-15 rifle and other firearms from the family's collection, Nehemiah moved through the house with chilling precision. After the killings, Nehemiah texted a picture of his dead mother to his girlfriend and spent hours playing violent video games. He eventually drove to his church where he confessed to the murders. Initially, Nehemiah claimed he had anger issues and had been having homicidal and suicidal thoughts for years. He told investigators he hoped to spark a mass shooting at a local Walmart after killing his family. During court proceedings, mental health experts testified that Nehemiah suffered from untreated schizoaffective disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and depression. Defense attorneys argued he had experienced physical and emotional abuse in a household dominated by his father's apocalyptic religious beliefs. In 2016, a judge sentenced Nehemiah as a juvenile, meaning he would be released at age 21. This decision sparked public outrage and legal challenges. After years of appeals, the New Mexico Supreme Court upheld the juvenile sentence, and Nehemiah was released in 2021. His case ignited debate about whether juvenile offenders who commit heinous crimes can be rehabilitated and whether the justice system adequately balances punishment, public safety, and the potential for youth rehabilitation. These cases represent just a fraction of the complex, heartbreaking stories where family homes became crime scenes and children became killers. Each narrative forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the intersection of adolescent development, mental health, abuse, and our justice system's capacity to respond appropriately. Click the subscribe button now and become part of a community dedicated to understanding the darkest corners of human behavior. Your subscription helps support our investigative journalism and the experts who provide crucial insights into these complex cases.